Hello and welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast, where today I'm joined by the amazing Katy Howell from social media agency Immediate Future. Katy has been in the agency world for 40 years, run her own agency for 20 of those years, and is the social media expert we often hear from on the TV, radio and in the newspapers. She has awards left, right and centre and has truly stamped her expert mark in the agency world. But with extreme highs can come extreme lows. And a few years ago, Katy experienced burnout of the severest form. And today, she's going to share that journey with us. I look forward to diving into this subject with Katy, who you will see and hear has emerged from this stronger than ever. And by sharing her story, we're really hoping to help other agency leaders with those all-important topics of burnout and stress. Trigger warning, this episode discusses ill mental health and suicide. If you're affected by anything we discuss, you can find some useful links in the show notes.
At the moment, mental health for founders and people who are in those positions of responsibility, it's very shallow. Alongside very shallow conversations that go, you need to look after your mental health, is the conversation that says, how I made $1 million in a week, and how to be successful. You need to do this, this, and this. And you're not a good leader if you do this, this, and this. Barrage. Actually, the biggest support I got were from my industry pals, other founders, where we were open with each other. And I'm lucky enough to have great relationships. Is your community, if you can be open, the community is actually much more supportive.
Welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast from the Wow Company. If you're searching for the right strategies, tools, and connections to ignite your thinking and elevate your business, then join us for a fortnightly dose of inspiration. Our guests range from industry-leading agencies and cutting-edge tech pioneers to motivational speakers and executives, all offering actionable insights to help you thrive in profit and purpose. So, whether you're a growing consultancy or an agency leader, this podcast is your source of knowledge and encouragement to spark meaningful change in your business and beyond. Katy, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
A pleasure.
So you've got a whole host of incredible achievements behind you in your work career. And as somebody who kind of researches all the guests that come on, I just love seeing all of these awards and this amazing history that you've got. But we never learn an awful lot about the actual person behind it all. So would you mind sharing with us something about you as a person that we don't already know?
What lots of people don't know is my degree is not in the arts, which you'd expect having a marketing background, but is actually in genetics and plant sciences, and I am a BSc, not a BA.
Wow.
So yeah, I come from a very different kind of background. And those who have not met me, I am also a founder of colour, a female founder of colour, which is still pretty unusual in this day and age, to have an agency leader who comes from an ethnic diverse background.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing both of those things, Katy. Yeah, incredible. I love learning that little bit extra about the actual person behind, like I say, all those achievements. Would you mind sharing a little bit about Immediate Future? And let's start, how was it born?
Scrappily. So yes, I was working at DDB as the internet kind of came online, and I began to see this amazing opportunity for marketeers. And for marketers, there was a big thing back in the day of marketing is a conversation. It was like a really, there were books on it, and there was a little gang of us going, oh, hold on. There's something really interesting about this, based on MySpace, forums.
Yeah,
MySpace,
wow.
Yeah.
Blast from the past.
I know. Well, it gets even worse because back in those days, it was a couple more years on after I'd left DDB and decided to set up on my own as a freelancer, having just had my second baby, and persuade brands that they should consider having more conversations and getting closer to their customers. nobody even knew what I was talking about. And people were still throwing sheep on Facebook at each other and poking each other. And, Twitter was just free SMS when we used to have to pay for our text.
Yeah.
So,
oh my goodness.
So, yes, back in the day. So it was really that element. And because I am just obsessed about learning things and trying to work out how things happen and why they work, and I've never stopped being that person. I basically learned everything I could about social networks and what weak ties are and strong ties are, and I wrote papers and really got into this idea of how brands can use marketing but within a more conversational style, and getting close to their customers. So that's how I started, and I started it freelancing for a couple of years while everybody thought I was mad.
Well, if that isn't the best way to start, then I don't know what is. And has it evolved how you'd have imagined? I can only think from, how much just sort of technology's evolved in the last sort of 20 years or so. Is it what you imagined it to be? No.
Well, I say there are two things. First of all, I had absolutely zero ambition in setting up an agency. That was not why I did this. But I was so successful in the first few years that by 2004, I needed help. I had over 20 clients all on my own.
Wow.
I had two little ones running around, and my husband, bless him, and I had a conversation, and he agreed to stop work and bring up the kids because we were struggling to get help. And I launched Immediate Future because I just needed help. I needed staff. So very much the accidental agency owner. Still took me a couple of years before I realised I'd actually launched an agency. And then, of course, the technology has never stopped changing, but I love it. So for me, learning new things at the moment, I'm trying to work out what the frameworks will be around a cookieless future for social networks. What does that mean? How will we target? All of those things. I love doing all that stuff. So for me, it's part of the pleasure.
Amazing. That's so cool. And what are you, you've said there that you love the learning side. So I wonder if that's the answer to this question, but I'll ask you anyway. What are you most passionate about within your agency?
Marketing, first and foremost, because I think it is an amazing craft. There's always things to learn, from behavioural science to how to analyse statistics to econometrics through to... There's just so much to know, let alone the fact when I started, there were 7 channels to market. Now there are thousands of channels to market.
Yeah.
So marketing, definitely. I'm curious as to how we influence behaviours. I find that really interesting. But also, I think as I've got older, there are a couple of other bits, which is diversity. I have become more vocal about championing diversity, but also had to learn a huge amount myself. I am a product of being a child of the 70s, where political correctness, or whatever you call it these days, didn't exist. So I've had to learn myself, and that's been really interesting. And the last one is I think I'm really passionate right now in the current climate, with everything being as revolting as it is trying to be kind to people. I'm making a very, very conscious effort on kindness, and that's an interesting personal journey.
Yeah, I love all of those answers. Thank you. So you have kindly agreed to share your mental health story today. And up front, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this, because I think it's going to be so helpful for everyone listening. Do you mind, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Do you mind sharing with us, sort of your journey over the last few years?
Not at all. And there is actually a reason, Chloe, that I want to do this, and that is because I frequently see and speak to other founders who I can see the signals. What eventually for me became a very life-changing burnout. And I'm seeing signals right now. We've had a very, very tough year, and most agency founders and leaders are struggling to hold it all together. So let me tell you about my journey. So I as a child of an immigrant, very high performance family, always delivering. I am put your big girl pants on, take on board everything. I had no idea I was really struggling. Zero idea. Even though I was crying in the shower in the morning, so my husband didn't hear, so I wasn't sharing it with anybody else. Just had no clue what was going on, and kept saying to myself, "Come on, Katy, you can do this. Come on, you've got a spine of steel. Just put one foot in front of the other." And I think in a way that's almost like the thread that is inside most founders, because we wouldn't be founders if we weren't doing that. But I would say that went on for a couple of years. So it was literally constant. And then and this is quite difficult to talk about, so I'm going to make it sound very chirpy when it isn't, but I was going into a meeting and I was standing on the platform and I could not stop thinking about all the things that could go wrong, all the issues that could arise and how I needed to fix them, and I just was unable to turn my head off. And I took a step in front of the train. Now, luckily enough, and then there are two bits to this that I want to explain. The first one is, you think with a family who I adore and love, with children, my husband, you think they would be my first thought? No. My first thought was, please make this stop. Stop. I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. Luckily enough, I stepped back and ran from the station and called the Samaritans. And I ended up sitting in this kind of it's like a cul-de-sac on the ground under a tree and cried for 4 hours to the Samaritans.
Yeah.
And then got myself up, went home and talked to my husband for the first time about it. And I never thought this was me. So I was absolutely, when it hit me like a thunderbolt. I was completely broken. I didn't know I'd never even thought about where I should turn. And I think it is possibly the most life-changing thing that ever happened to me. But more importantly is that on reflection is I did not notice how bad things were. I did not ask for help.
Uh-huh.
I did not explain what was going on. I kept saying, come on, you can do this. You need to be brave. Get on with it.
Yeah.
Actually, I was doing so much damage and I had no idea.
Yeah. Wow. That's so much to digest just listening to it. I can only imagine what that must have felt like for you. I guess the first thing that comes into my mind, you said when you were stood on the platform that you just thought, I want this to stop. And I wonder, are you able to kind of vocalise what was it that you wanted to stop?
Well, it was a massively perfect storm that happened, which is that I didn't want to go to work. I wanted to leave immediate future. I absolutely hated being there and I was trapped. I was completely trapped by it's a gilded cage, by a cage of my own building, and felt stuck. I didn't know which way to turn. I think that the tears in the morning were mostly about not wanting to go to work, not wanting to put a face on. But that moment was brought together by a number of different things. The first was it was a tough year for us. So I had a very toxic team who I did not enjoy working with, of all of my own making. I didn't know how I was doing it, but I was making it bad. I didn't know at the time, but I know now I was perimenopausal, but I had no idea at the time. And my husband had had a heart attack earlier in the previous year, a widowmaker heart attack, and literally survived by the fact that we have a great cardiac unit here where I live. But as a consequence, I kept everything from him, and he's my best mate because I didn't want to stress him out. And it was just that perfect storm. So what actually happened is I began to get what I only describe it, I have no idea if it's a medical description, as hyper anxiety. So what happens is you're standing there and you go, oh my gosh, what happens if the office burns down? This is what I need to do. Maybe I need to move. I mean, just random stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Like that has no bearing in any form of reality becomes part of the problems that you're trying to solve. And it is endless, and you don't sleep, and you just can't stop worrying about everything. I have no idea how I got to that stage.
Yeah.
Other than I felt responsible for everything and couldn't get my mind out of that responsibility. And that is what I wanted to stop. I was exhausted with it, and I couldn't find a way to stop the noise.
Yeah.
And stop constantly problem solving everything. And in my distress, I just thought the only solution was to not be here.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously from hindsight, like we know that that's absolutely not what we want anyone to be thinking, but I can totally understand how you came to this conclusion when you've got no outlet because you don't want to, you don't want to cause any stress for your partner. You've got all of this stuff going on, all these problems that aren't even existing. It's just so much to handle, isn't it? Talk to me about the toxic team situation. What happened there?
Well, I take full responsibility because I'm not a natural man manager because I lack consistency, and I'm a people pleaser. So what happens is people come to me and go, "Yeah, of course," and yeah, I was horrible. It was definitely people that I think it depends on who you are, but I know a lot of founders are like, we care very deeply. We are quite emotional people. I know people say you shouldn't be in business, but we are, because we care deeply about great performance, doing great things, having a great team. These are the things that really matter. But you are also not a human being to many of the people that you work with. You are the person who is the boss, which depersonalizes you. So nobody could see that I was struggling. And the person that they dump all their stress on, so whether it's stress in their personal lives or they throw it all at me, and I am the sort of person, nobody expects me to be, but I am the sort of person who tries to fix everything. Mm-hmm. The consequence of this is I'm not just fixing my own problems, I'm fixing everybody else's.
Yeah.
Whether they've split up with their boyfriend, whether they're looking for a new flat, as well as the business problems, as well as the client problems. I'm fixing everything. And it becomes a really nasty habit. And I think it's not noticing the stress that caused me. And it's really easy to blame everybody around me, but it isn't. It's the way I behave, not the way other people behave, because nothing has changed. It's just I've changed. And that was a big revelation that came out the other side of this, which is, and at the time, by the way, I never blamed anybody else. There was a lot of fighting going on internally. There was a lot of scrabbling to get promotions, and it became a very aggressive environment.
Yeah.
Where people did lots of complaining to me. At the same time, I'm looking at the numbers going, Jesus, how do I make more money? How do I keep us afloat? All of these things going at the same time with very little support. Well, zero support around me.
Yeah. Wow. And that's just another thing to add into the mix. And as you said earlier, like, being a people pleaser and, oh my gosh, just not having anyone to talk to. So when you talk about, obviously it got to what I would say is the severest form that you can get to. You literally were thinking about stepping in front of a train. With hindsight, are you able to spot now? I mean, you mentioned a couple of them earlier, but spot now the symptoms leading up to it that maybe you didn't notice at the time. So I know you talked about, crying in the shower and maybe not talking to people enough. Was there anything else that came up that actually now you go, that was definitely a factor that would have led to that critical moment?
Yeah, I would say I question why I'm feeling the stress. It's a really good technique for me, because I'm curious anyway. So why are you feeling a bit stressed out? I mean, it happened to me the other day. I read a very, very old review that was quite, about working at a media picture that was quite insulting to me. And I couldn't stop picking at it, as you do. And I thought, why do I care? I know that this person did not leave the company of their own accord. they have a problem I don't. Why am I bothered by this? And I find asking myself that, and I go, well, I'm bothered because I don't want anybody to hate me. Well, people are going to hate you, Katy. You have to deal with this. Yeah, people don't always like your style. I am out there and noisy and a bit shouty, and I wear slogan T-shirts and I love to champion things, and this is who I am, and I can't change that. And I think asking myself why it's bothering me is a really good part of this, because it allows me to step back, and that is a very good way for us to stop and think, why are we feeling shitty? And how can we deal with that? And that is because we have sometimes no control over what happens around us. And again, I think a trait of founders is to try and control things because that's who we are. Not in a Machiavellian sort of way, but we want to control the world around us so that it's organised in a way that we understand. And letting go of control is really hard. It's a really hard part of this, which is I can't control the world around me. But honestly, it's been the best thing for this year. Because I couldn't control the fact that the market is the way it is. I can't control the things around me. And this weekend, I know this is going out about a little bit later, but right now we're in the midst of very violent racist riots. And I have to keep saying to myself, as a woman of colour, and having conversations with my son. My daughter has not carried my colour. My son has, and he's up in Leeds where there's quite a bit of trouble, is you can't control this. You can only control what you can control, and try and keep very calm about it rather than panicked. I mean, it does mean occasionally I get into panic, and I am checking the news to see whether or not I should go into London this week to make sure I'm not caught up in it. But again, I only can control what I can control. So that's another element to this.
Yeah. What a great factor to give you that strength as well. I mean, not that we should even be having to think about this with all of these riots and things, but, you know, the fact that I talk about this a lot, the spheres of control, and, you know, you can only control what you're able to control. And then everything else, actually, your energy doesn't need to be wasted on that, does it? But that must be quite a hard thing to reach when, especially as an agency owner, like you say, you care and you want things to go really well, but also being a people pleaser too, like a natural people pleaser.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things that actually your energy can quite easily slip into, I really worry about what that person's thinking, which is something that you have no control over.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your recovery process?
Long. Very years, not months, years. You get over the worst of it. And obviously I spoke to my doctor within that week of the incident, and she told me that I had high functioning depression and put me on antidepressants. I was really not keen.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember the Valium years for many women and did not want to go into zombie mode. She kind of pushed me very hard and put me on what are called SSRIs, which is serotonin. And they took about 4 weeks to make a difference, but my word, they made just a huge difference. Because I was perimenopausal at the time, and it was a very fast fix to being able to control some of the emotional roller coaster I was on. But then came the hard work, which was, as much as it's, you know, talking to people and therapy and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff, actually the hard work is self-examination. The big hard part is, who am I? Who am I and why am I in this place? Because I love my kids. I love my husband. I love my family. Why would I even think about this? Why would I have got to that? Who am I then? You know, just who am I? Am I just this horrible person who's really selfish? Who am I? And that was very hard. That was not an overnight thing. That was a lot of focus. And of course, then COVID came along, you know, was the end of that. And I immediately put in place lots of time to meditate, do yoga, and spend time just sitting quietly by myself and going, so why are you like this?
Was that like a delayed guilt for you then? Like you said at the time, you didn't even think about that. You just wanted the noise to stop. And then was the reflection part the part where, like you said there, like why would I think about that? Am I a selfish person? Was it guilt that you were feeling at that point?
Guilt, exhaustion. I mean, you really, I mean, I slept for the first 3 or 4 weeks afterwards, just partly the medication, partly because I just couldn't cope with the world. And my way of dealing with high stress is actually to sleep. It's actually the opposite of many other people that are awake all night. I just actually sleep. So I slept a lot. So there's kind of like, for me, there were stages. I have no idea, and I've never checked this out, whether or not it's the same for anybody else. But for me, the first bit was just exhaustion and my brain just getting back into a normal functioning, not trying to solve every problem, not trying to take responsibility. Then came a lot of talking. Mostly, the most helpful was talking to my partner, because he is my best friend and knows me so well, and he's just a great listener. So actually having somebody who understood the context of it all and wasn't rushing to fix everything, but just let me endlessly talk. I used to call it my dark toad in the corner of a dark room, and how I felt they were sitting there glaring at me. And that was probably about a year, I would say, of talking. I mean, obviously I got better, but inside. And then another year or so of beginning to understand I needed to understand how I worked.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I think the journey to get to the end game is very long. And I've heard this before, that burnout, which is what this was, is not a fast recovery. And I would absolutely say that. And it is not taking a holiday. I mean, don't get me wrong, take a holiday. You actually have to work quite hard on yourself to get your mind into the right place to be able to accept. And that's not being uber positive. It's about being very realistic about what you can manage and how you manage it. And that has been a very interesting journey for me. And one which I would encourage lots of leaders and people who are in high stress situations to really get a grip on. We're not taught how to do that. We are taught, and in fact, if you just go to LinkedIn about how you can make £1 million and how you should be doing this and how you should be doing that, blah, 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 there's all this intense, and people talk about it as pressure, but actually what happens is it sits in your head telling you you're not good enough.
Uh-huh.
And that bit is the bit you have to sit with and go, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
I am good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough for me.
Absolutely.
What do I really want?
So powerful. And it's interesting to me as well that you said that part of the thing that really helps you now is that reflection, like, why am I stressed? Why am I feeling this way? And yet that was also a massive part of your recovery. Who am I? That reflection, who am I? What makes me this way? What makes me tick? Really working on yourself. And now it's like your superpower, right? Actually sitting back and reflecting. Yeah. That's amazing. How did you juggle kind of your business? How did you juggle immediate future with your recovery?
That first 4 weeks, I handed to my leadership team. I literally told them what was going on. Just right. Not quite in as much gruesome detail as I've told you guys.
Sure.
But at the time, I just said, look, I'm not well. I'm under doctor's care. I'm going to disappear for a bit. I'll drop in and out. It wasn't great because the business needed me, but at the same time, there was no choice. Actually, it was a fantastic thing because a lot of founders say this. Oh, it's, my company is my third baby, or just like a child. It means everything to me. What I did do was disentangle myself from immediate future. Doesn't mean I care less.
Mm-hmm.
We care more. But I took that emotional, oh my God, if it fails, my life has ended type.
Uh-huh.
And went, no, this is not a child. And do you know what? You are quite capable of recovering and doing something else. You're never going to be not doing something because look where you've got so far. You wouldn't.
Yeah.
And reminding myself that I am quite smart and I am quite clever and I care deeply about doing a good job. And while that can also be my Achilles heel, it's also about saying that the business is not everything. What is really important to me? And I always say to people, in working that out, I kind of didn't give two Fs, as they say, about a lot of things. I suddenly went, does this matter? Is this going to make my life better? Or will you manage without it? And that's a very good place to get into. I think you have to probably go through the hell before you come out and go, actually, what really matters to me? And I see this as a really important part, because what matters to me was having good experiences. And the second element of that is being kind to me. I was very good at being kind to everybody else. I was really terrible at being kind to me.
Yeah.
Going, I'm knackered. No, keep working. You need to keep doing this. You've got to pay everybody's salary. Keep going.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because it feels like that's ingrained in you, to maybe not be nice to yourself. So actually being nice to yourself, you're like, oh my goodness, this is so out of my comfort zone. But like, you look so happy when you talk about things, it's incredible to see. So you mentioned it a little bit earlier about that good stress, right? And I'm always talking about that scale of stress, because not all stress is bad. That good stress is the one that, like you say, gets you to the deadline and gets you to stand up in front of 100 people and talk, or, that's the good stress, isn't it? How do you now differentiate when that's moving into not so good stress?
I would say it's that pit of your stomach anxiety when that starts to grow. And it's really funny, because I've also been much, much more open with my team. And so one of the things I said recently on one of our team get-togethers was, if you say to me, can I have 2 minutes? It is possibly one of the most stressful things, because immediately my head spins off to go, what's that about? Are they resigning? Is there a problem? Is there a problem with this client? Is there a problem? So I said, do me a favour. To say you are, can you just say what it's about? Instead of leaving me waiting hours, because I don't do any work then. What I do is I try to do work, and I spend most of my time sweating away going, oh.
Yeah, people don't think about it the other way, do they? Like, a lot of people talk about how if their boss says to them, can I have 2 minutes? They worry about it. But actually the other way is just as stressful.
Yeah. And, sending out messages and getting no response whatsoever from an email, you begin to feel like the rejected girlfriend waiting for the phone to ring. And it's all of those things. So what I do is I listen much better now to when that anxiety comes. I stop, I step away from my desk, and I go, why? Why is this bothering you? As I said, that review recently is a really good example, which is I had to face the fact that I'm not going to appeal to everybody. Face it. Deal with it. I might not like it, but I can't change it. And that really helps you differentiate between one set of stress and the normal stress about trying to get something finished or getting ready for a pitch, for instance, or pitching, which are very stressful situations. I always feel a bit buzzy as well. They feel like you're a bit hyped up. The adrenaline flows. You're feeling really good. There isn't really a massive anxiety. You don't start problem solving in cascade, which is what was happening to me. So solve this problem. Now what? Oh, imagine another problem. Imagine another problem.
Yeah.
Keep solve it. That sort of cascade that starts. That doesn't happen around normal stress. That bit of anxiety that is cascading, you have to face it. And you have to say, oh my God, how are we going to make payroll this month? And you have to say, right, okay, that's it. But there's no point in worrying about the next month or 6 months or this or that. You can only do what you can do now. And that is a very kind of liberating position to put your head.
In Bench Press last year, Bench Press 2023, we talked about well-being, and it still blows my mind. So to kind of summarise some of the results, we had 60% of agency owners that said that they're worried about their business at least once a month, if not once a week, if not every single day. And then you've got, it also said that 45% say that their work-life balance was not really there. They only had a healthy work-life balance either some of the time or, even more scarily, none of the time. With these sorts of stats, I wonder from your experience as well, do you think there's enough talk and help in the agency world? No, we're getting an immediate shake of the head there. What do you think needs to happen with that? Do you think we need more, or, you know, you used external sources, right? You had your, like you said, therapy and talking, and is that enough, do you think?
No. That we, at the moment, mental health for founders is, and people who are in those positions of responsibility, it's very shallow. So it talks about things like, oh, if we get burnout, take a holiday, and, you know, talk to a therapist or a coach. It's all very, very, very shallow. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason I wanted to talk about this, because alongside very shallow conversations that go, you need to look after your mental health, is the conversation that says how I made $1 million in a week, and, you know, how to be successful. You need to do this, this, and this, and you're not a good leader if you do this, this, and this. Barrage. Actually, the biggest support I got were from my industry pals, other founders, where we were open with each other. And I'm lucky enough to have great relationships with people like Tamara from Social Element, and folk who have been down some of these roads. Is your community, if you can be open, the community is actually much more supportive, which is quite hard. I tried for a long time to do this. I belonged to a number of clubs, but they all turned into, dare I say it, a bit of a willy-waving exercise of telling everybody how great they were. And I felt like I was possibly the only person who didn't feel that my life was great. But since COVID, I think people have got a little bit better at being a bit more open. And there are some communities, such as the WOW community, where we even have a space where you can say when you're feeling a bit crap. And I love that people use it. It's just fabulous. Because we all, as you rightly say, look at that, 60% of people are having challenges with their business, whatever that might be, or, you know, they're worrying about things and working around the clock. And knowing that, for instance, that sales picked up last month, but this month, oh my gosh, you know, we hit the 1st of August and it's all gone quiet and you can't get hold of anybody, is knowing that everybody else is in the same boat helps.
Yeah.
It doesn't fix the problem, but it helps. It makes you feel like you're not alone. And I think we need, there are no quick fixes to this and there are no easy solutions, but I think our community is where the answers really lie.
Yeah.
Our colleagues, peers. And the other element to that is I am now completely open and frank with my team. And if they don't like having that kind of a boss, well, so be it. But I'll tell them when I'm stressed out. I'll tell them when I'm not feeling myself. I've already mentioned that I'm anxious because of the riots. So they are aware of where I am and how I feel.
Yeah.
So then the decision of how they behave around me is their decision.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been open and said this is on my mind at the moment. It's making me a bit distracted.
And I'm guessing that works the other way as well. I'm guessing you encourage them to share how they're feeling.
Absolutely.
Which just opens up that conversation amongst the whole team, doesn't it? To be able to support each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. And when we last spoke, I think I don't know how much you knew it impacted me, but you said, you know, if it's sunny in the afternoon and I fancy a walk, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for a walk. And I just love that. I love that. And I know that that's not necessarily attainable for everybody. You know, not everybody can just get up and go for that walk. But, you know, I wonder, what daily practices have you got, or what mentality do you take into each day that helps you to kind of maintain that positive mental health and prevent you from moving into that stress and burnout stage?
So yes, that absolutely. If it's a nice day, if I'm feeling good, I will go and take breaks through the day. I also still practice my yoga or meditation, which I just 25 minutes every morning, just enough to remind me of trying to pick particularly for me, who thinks about 100 things at the same time, a single focus. And that also plays out in what I do. I always, at the beginning of each day, I look at my list of things to do and I say, what can I give to somebody else? 1, 2, what is the one thing I need to accomplish today? Just one. Because then I feel good about it. I might do 3 things, but if I do that one thing, at the end of the day, I feel really good. The other thing is that I crochet and knit, and crocheting and knitting is fabulous because you count. Like, I'm not watching telly. You have to count. So I'm often going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is, after a while, becomes a mantra, and your brain disengages because you can't think about anything else because you're keeping count, disengages from what's happening in front of you, and like a mantra, your brain relaxes. And so my poor family are stuck with lots of jumpers, hundreds of scarves, and now I've started knitting socks. So we've now got really misshapen socks that would fit elephants at the moment. Definitely finding the rhythm that suits you. That suits me. Might not suit you guys, but finding the rhythm that suits me, that makes me think differently. And I've stepped up my creativity. I do a lot more painting, a lot more art, a lot more sculpture. Yeah. I make sure that my time away from work, because my children are now grown up, it is spent doing creative things. A lot more time gardening. I'm lucky enough to have a garden, but a lot more time gardening. And as I said, 1 task a day, and accepting what I can't control. As I keep saying, what I can't control, I have to accept. What can I do that would make me feel better? And these are questions, I say, taking that time and bringing some joy into your life is really important.
Yeah. I love what you said there about it's the disengagement. I think that's the thing, and finding what task helps you to disengage. Like you say, for knitting, for you it's knitting. I've spoken to lots of different leaders before, and like for me it's getting out into nature. Like I need to be in the middle of the woods building a fire or something, so that I can actually just focus on the fact that I need to get this fire going, or that I need to, otherwise I'm not going to eat, that kind of thing. Whatever it takes to actually be able to step away from whatever your day-to-day looks like, which is easier said than done, isn't it? I think
it is. You have to be very disciplined. And that bit is, whether you're running, cycling, doing exercise, being in nature, doing it, crafting, whatever it is your thing is, you have to be quite disciplined about it. And, avoid doom scroll, a spot when you are doom scrolling, when you're beginning to get to that place.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the future then, the immediate future, mind the pun, what do you think agency leaders can be doing to help the younger generations? Now, I know a lot of our conversation today has been focused on how we can support the agency leaders themselves, which is really important, obviously. But obviously with the younger generations coming through, they're the future of leaders. What do they need to be aware of, and what can we do to help educate them so that the risk of burnout is minimised, do you think?
I think that's really important, actually, because it's not just me, it's my leadership team. And I would say that the one skill that I think I've learned is to shut my mouth and listen, and be empathetic. I'm a lot older than most of my staff. But that doesn't stop me from remembering what it was like to be that age, or to have kids that are younger, or to be desperately trying to find a flat to live in. I remember all of those things. I just have to remind myself of what it feels like when your world is like that, when everything around you in your world feels like, because it's very easy to be dismissive. When you've got to the other end of that and your kids are grown up, it's very easy to be dismissive about how bloody exhausting it is having small children, and I think, so empathy is a big one for me, and listening, and really asking the questions and not finding solutions, but thinking about it. So, and I learned that from my husband, because that's what he does. He listens, he empathizes, and maybe a day or so later he'll go, I was thinking about what you said. Would it be easier if we did it this way? And it's just genius. if I haven't come to the solution myself, and one of the questions I would often, what do you think you can do about this? What would you like to do about this? You know, so, and just not stressing it. If they need to take time off to go see a doctor, if they need to take time off to flat hunt, just don't get all wound up about how many hours they're working. Because I'm not going to be responsible for somebody else's burnout. That's a priority for me. I'm just not going to be. And if the company doesn't work, it doesn't work. I just don't care anymore about this. This is it. I want us to work and be a joyous place to work, because I've been through the shit show and it is not for me. Basically, I can't do that anymore. I can't be that person anymore because it's not me. So, listening is a really challenging skill.
Yeah, it is, but it's so powerful, isn't it? And what about, to the broader agency world? What do you think we need to do to secure a healthier future for agency owners, not just for, the future leaders, but just agency owners right now?
Right, this is just my philosophy. And this is because, for me, having loads and loads and loads of money is not a driver for me. Okay, so I can only speak from my perspective. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want enough money to be comfortable and be able to buy rubbish that I tend to buy these days. If we're having a delivery here, something useless. But, owning a yacht, for instance, is not my thing. Having a fast car is not my thing. I mean, my car's 15 years old and it leaks, so there's mushrooms in the back of it, and I'm quite happy with that. My colleagues call it my mushroom car, but I couldn't care less, because for me it's a tool from getting to A to B, nothing else. So once I'm telling you this, not because I'm going, I'm proud of being, telling you this because you can then see that I thought for a long time, and you get asked this, are you going to sell? How big are you? Blah, blah, blah. The reason I left big agency was because I wanted to do, it sounds so corny, doesn't it? Good work. Because the personal satisfaction of delivering a campaign that works, that makes other people happy, it's just the meaning of life for me. Yeah. It's like, having that great day out with the kids, and for them to be fast asleep in the back of the car and knowing that you've done great things and spent good time together. That's what I mean when I'm really interested in the experience. And so I think for me, agency life should be a little bit more of an adventure, less about hitting targets. Don't get me wrong, we have to hit targets because we have to pay people. I'm not saying we don't hit targets, but less of this, I've got to sell this for a 5 times EBITDA, blah, blah. I know all of this. I've been down this road. But actually, the real joy in running an agency is feeling great together, coming up with fabulous ideas, brainstorming and laughing till you're crying. That's what's worth it. Today is what's worth it, not what's going to happen down the road. And that is my philosophy, is trying to bring joy into living. And that's because I'm a great big oldie. And so for me, my career is, where it is now. And I just want the satisfaction and the happiness that comes in waking up in the morning and wanting to be at work and to talk to my colleagues.
Yeah, it's about the journey, not the final destination, isn't it? Amazing. And on a big picture for you, what's coming up? What's in the future for you? Do you know? Do you care at this point, or are you just in the present?
Bit both. So definitely in the present more at the moment, because life is tough. So I'm just dealing with what's in front of me. But the future, I've always got ideas. I mean, God help anybody who's knows a founder, because we're annoyingly, oh my God, we could do this. And what about that? And so for me, the future is about doing more innovative and interesting things. I'm very, very obsessed with customer behaviours and consumer behaviours, of why people buy things, both in consumer and in B2B, because B2B is becoming more personal reasons for purchasing rather than professional reasons for purchasing. And I'm so curious as to how the world's changed. So for me, the future is just keep on innovating. I mean, I work in an industry that innovates all the time, that changes all the time. I can't turn around without an algorithm changing. And so yeah, the future for me is just to enjoy the ride. It's a roller coaster. I'm putting my hands in the air and screaming my head off in pleasure.
Amazing. I love that. And final question then, Katy. We ask everyone on the podcast, and I'd love to hear your take on this. What does beautiful business mean to you?
I think it's a business, and this is how I live my life these days, which impacts the people around me with kindness, because there is such pleasure in being kind to people. I mean, I know it's an overused term, but that bit where you actually go, how can I help you? And I've had a lot of CMOs coming to me who have unfortunately been made redundant, and I'm helping wherever I can, because ultimately it's a very selfish reason. It makes me feel great. It makes me feel good that I'm helping somebody who might be struggling, who is shocked at their redundancy or shocked at the job market at the moment. I'm helping wherever I can to be that voice of you're good, you're great, it's just the market, trying to help people around me because it makes me feel great. And it is such a rewarding way to live your life. I wish I'd known this when I was younger, that it's okay just to be kind, because that's all you really need, because then in your heart you can sing.
Yeah. Oh, well, you figured it out now, and I think that's the main thing. Some people don't ever get there, do they? So that's incredible. Thank you so much. Genuinely, I think your story is really inspiring. I love talking to you now. I love seeing how happy you are now. And I'm so glad that you've kind of come out the other side and found all of these amazing things that help you just to be better in every way. Yeah, I just think it's incredible. So thank you so much for sharing and coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Beautiful Business Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please remember to subscribe and leave us a review. For more advice and practical tips on what it's really like to build a beautiful business, visit our content hub at wowco.uk/hub, or check out the link in the show note.